What's going on, everybody? I'm GemMint, and today we're going to review the Batman Hush Saga Omnibus. Now, being that this is a spoiler-heavy story, we're going to go non-spoilers to show you the book, give you a little brief synopsis of what's collected here, and then I'll give you fair warning before we jump into spoilers. Before we do that, if you can, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you want to see more of these reviews, and hit that notification bell. Let's get into it. All right, before we get into the story, let's take a look at the actual book itself. Here is the front of the dust jacket. You've got the Jim Lee pencils going into the completed artwork. Batman Hush Saga Omnibus. Here goes the spine, kind of bland. And honestly, I'm not really a big fan of the graphics on the dust jacket or the hardcover. I feel like there's so many iconic covers and panels from this storyline that they could have chose, but what are you gonna do? So $150 cover price. It collects Batman 608 through 619, which is the Hush storyline, plus $685. Then you've got the follow-up series, which are contained in Batman Gotham Knights 50 through 55, then again in 60 through 71, then 73 and 74. You got Detective Comics 846 through 850, plus 852. Then you have the Hush interlude from Wizard Zero. You have Batman Streets of Gotham 1 through 4, issue 14, then 16 through 21, and then you have the quick, short aftermath story where the creative team came back together to revisit Hush. Not much going on the inside of the dust jacket, but you have a little quote here from Hush. You have a biography on the writers. You have Jeff Loeb here. Paul Dini did some great stuff. Then you have the artists like Jim Lee, Scott Williams, the inker, Dustin Nguyen, and then just some Jim Lee pencils on the actual hardcover. I don't know, the black and white, it felt a little bit boring to me. We'll see at the end of this omnibus the bonus materials and so many great covers and variants they could have used for the artwork, but what are you gonna do? So, black cover page, another Hush Saga kind of cover page. Here we have some more of the credits. There we go, Scott Williams there. Just some more, the colorists, the letterers. Then you have the table of contents. So this is my second time reading the Hush storyline. I read it in the Absolute Edition, so I reread it right now. And then you have the follow-up series, which this was my first time jumping into. You had Pushback, you had Human Nature, then we had Shape of Thing to Comes, Payback, Heart of Hush, Faces of Evil. Then you had this kind of little 4-series intermission, if you will. Then you have House of Hush, and then here is that Aftermath. So what you're going to get with Hush, the main storyline, is incredible artwork. I mean, I know you've seen these panels and these images online, even if you've never read this story. Just iconic Jim Lee and Scott Williams art. Jeff Loeb, one of the great writers. And as I was reading this, I was wanting to say, man, I'm a little bit disappointed in Jeff Loeb. Like, he has some of the quintessential Batman stories, but the storyline on Hush, I don't really love that much. Basically, because we're still in non-spoiler territory, you've got this character Hush, and he's really like a master strategist. He's able to manipulate and use other villains to do his bidding. With the case of Killer Croc, he's manipulating Poison Ivy to manipulate Killer Croc to do whatever he wants to have done. So that's kind of his whole thing. I don't want to get into any more than that because it kind of ties into some of the main spoilers, but they bring out some of the rogues gallery. Like I mentioned, Poison Ivy, big Catwoman story here in her romance with Bruce. You have a Superman who shows up shortly. And you know what? I think what we'll do is we'll take a step back now because really anything forward is going to be spoiler talk. So let's jump out of here and then come right back. All right, guys, let's take a little bit of a break for this spoiler warning. If you're looking to pick up any omnibus, absolute editions, trade paperbacks, whatever, hit up our sponsor, organicpricebooks.com. They have great packaging, super fast shipping. They have pre-order so you don't miss out on any of your favorite omnis. And if you use code GEMMINT, it'll save you $2 every time. With that out the way, this has been your spoiler warning. Let's jump deep into the Hush saga. All right, we're back. So the reason why I didn't really want to get too much deeper into this storyline is because the Hush character is a character from Bruce Wayne's past. You have Thomas Elliot, who grew up with Bruce as a child. He experienced similar tragedies with the death of his parents, but what we find out later on in the story is it was really his doing. He cut the brake lines to his father's car to kill him, and then he was raised by his mother. He had an unsuccessful attempt at her life, and it's kind of the trope of the crazy old lady raising the mama's boy. He's hanging around because of her money. She's teaching him how to be strong by just kind of inspiring him by like Aristotle quotes and things of that nature. The thing about Thomas Elliot, about Hush, is that he knows Batman is Bruce Wayne. He's a highly skilled doctor. He's extremely smart and a master strategist, which is how he's able to manipulate all of these other villains. Like I mentioned, Poison Ivy. She's able to use her pheromones to get Clark Kent under her spell. And then we get the evil Superman. If you guys have seen the Superman Hush statue and wonder why he looks so angry, here he goes with the leaves around his neck, and he's attacking Batman. You know, they had to throw in some Harley Quinn action here and the Joker. So I guess what you're getting with Hush, you're getting top tier artwork, and the storyline is pretty intriguing. It actually gets better once we get into the rest of the saga. Although the initial follow-up I didn't really love, and I thought this was gonna kind of be a chore to read, but after the main story, it gets really interesting. So let's go forward and see where we're at here. There's a lot of twists and turns here, especially because Hush uses Clayface, who can impersonate people. We get the return of Jason Todd, the Red Hood, for the first time here, but it's actually not really him. So that's pretty interesting. Here goes Hush now. So he covers his face up, and what's crazy about that is that plays more of a part later on in this saga of Hush covering his face. Here goes the Riddler. I kind of had an argument on the podcast I was doing on who's the better master strategist, whether it's Riddler or Hush. All right, so after the initial storyline, we get into these subsequent arcs. This arc has the Lee Bermejo artwork on the covers from Gotham Knights. So Pushback. So this is the return of Hush after he's seemingly killed and discarded into the river. You get the Green Arrow team up here, and then you get Hush teaming up with, man, I forget what the Patriot or something like that. Oh, Prometheus. Here he goes. Yeah, so this arc, I mean, I wasn't really a fan of. I guess it's kind of like an action-packed kind of thing. Again, showing Hush manipulating other villains, how they go up against Green Arrow. You get the Batman team up. Green Arrow doesn't really play that mess. You see how he goes after Bruce. And there's a lot of like, shouldn't you have just killed him already throughout this whole arc, whether it's the Joker or with Hush as well. So Pushback didn't really stick with me too much out of these arcs, to be honest. And then it's no longer Jim Lee on the art. All right, then we jump into the Human Nature arc. So this is a Poison Ivy storyline. It's about like these kids that she's taken in, but I guess hanging around her has kind of changed their DNA, and they start planting out, if you will. And it's just a Poison Ivy storyline. Hush gets involved. He tries to weaponize whatever her powers are, and she asks Bruce Wayne to save her and change her back into Pamela Isley. So it's a nice Poison Ivy storyline, got some heart to it. Here she goes, she's changed back, and it goes into Poison Ivy's origins. I kind of dug this little arc. So there's a couple of issues that are like intermission type of issues that do play a little bit of a role in the next arc. So this Life of Riley was this guy, I think he films pornos is what it was, and he happened to catch Batman fighting Hush in the back. Or actually, he found Bruce Wayne fighting Hush, but then he compares it to other footage of Batman fighting. He basically figures out that Bruce Wayne is Batman and tries to blackmail Bruce Wayne. And that comes back later to bite Bruce because Alfred does attempt to pay him off. So that little issue does have some payoff later on in these stories. So the next arc, Shape of Things to Come, it's a Clayface story. So it kind of reminds me a lot of the Poison Ivy story here, where there are multiple different Clayface, and Hush is once again manipulating whatever causes him to have those powers to try to create an army. And then you have a lot of twists and turns with Alfred, with the Clayface, portraying themselves as Alfred and things of that nature. So again, Hush, like, he doesn't really have a power set, so to say, but he really is a master tactician and manipulator. Batman confronting Clayface while he's locked up still. I think he needed some of his DNA or whatever to shut down the spread. All right, onto the Payback story. So what do we got here? Joker versus Hush, Joker versus Batman. Yeah, I don't really remember much of the Payback arc. I guess it was just a Joker, Hush versus Batman kind of thing. Heart of Hush. This one is interesting, man. So Hush, being that master tactician, goes after the people who Batman loves. And in this case, he finds out that he's got a thing for Catwoman. So we get a lot of backstory here. This is where we find out more about Hush as a child and his upbringing with his mother. He ends up actually killing his mother and inheriting the fortune, and that's when he really starts down this path to be a villain. Here's some more stuff as Bruce and Tommy as children. Here goes his mother right here. So overprotective. She goes to the summer camp where Martha Wayne talked her into letting her let her son go there. So this is just showing his upbringing. And I think the rest of these stories, they really add a lot to the overall main story of Hush, because you get to really dive deeper into his childhood and why he broke bad the way that he did. In Heart of Hush, so he goes after Catwoman, man. Thomas Elliot, being that surgeon, he's able to actually remove her heart, and he has her heart in like cryo freezing using Mr. Freeze technology. Heart of Hush was good. Hush wears the bandages, and initially it's not really a big deal. I think he just has, you know, scars on his face or what have you, but he ends up pulling a face off a la John Travolta and Nick Cage, and changes his appearance to look like Bruce Wayne. So that ends up being fun for the rest of the few issues here. He's terrorizing Gotham as Bruce Wayne, stealing all this money, making public appearances. He eventually gets captured in Vietnam by Catwoman here after she gets saved by Bruce and everything. And then we get into a part of the story where Batman is not Bruce Wayne. I guess this must have been like similar to the Batman and Robin Omnibus, and I think it was during Final Crisis where Bruce Wayne dies. So you have Dick Grayson playing Batman for a little while. It's only for a couple of issues of this omnibus. The Victor Saz thing was pretty cool. And then you get this villain, this gangster from the Elliot family's past. So he just gets out of jail for 37 years. He really wants to kill Batman for some reason. I don't know. He's got a beef with the Thomas and Martha Wayne and with Thomas Elliot's parents. So that's a cool flashback. It really does tie everything together pretty nice, though. At the end of the day, though, Hush has been captured. He's been letting villains out as Bruce Wayne, kind of trying to do some criminal reform, but really he's just littering the streets with villains. And he tries to get Jane Doe out, which is a Batman villain who has no skin. She's pretty messed up, but she's able to also disguise herself, like, you know, a la Mission Impossible style. She ends up cutting off Thomas Elliot's Bruce Wayne face, making him now disformed, while she has the Bruce Wayne face. Batman saves Hush, but now he has a reason to wear those wraps, which is kind of ironic. And that's the end of all of the subsequent storylines. You have this aftermath, which is really just showing how Hush survived dying in the river during the end of the Hush scene, and showing how he survives and how he gets kind of, I guess, rescued by Joker and Harley, how he ends up coming back. But it's only a couple of pages. Then we just get some bonus material here, a little biography on the Hush character, some of these great variants, iconic variants that you've seen a million times before, which again, they could have used some of this art, I would think, for, man, this would have been a great wraparound cover for the actual hardcover. This one too. These look like they're from the hardcovers, the standard size hardcovers. Awesome image here. Lee Bermejo, Jim Lee. And that's it. I want to thank ThatSpidermanBooth.com for sponsoring this video. It's almost the end of the month, so it's your last chance for their January subscription box. It's a $50 box where you get 5 comics, $100 retail value, store exclusives, and variants. And every box for January is going to get a copy of Essentia 1, the John Dolmayan book. He's the drummer for System of a Down, founder of Torpedo Comics, the Jim Lee variant. How fitting to go along with Batman Hush. Check out ThatSpidermanBooth.com and sign up for that subscription box. All right, guys, let me give you my final thoughts on the Hush Saga Omnibus. So I do like the main story. Again, you're really into it for the artwork. Jeff Loeb is one of the great writers. I don't think this is his best story, but I still think it's good enough. The Hush character is interesting enough, being that he ties in with Batman as a child and that he knows who he is and how he's able to manipulate all these other villains. The subsequent stories, I really like the stuff that Paul Dini did. The Heart of Hush, the House of Hush. All of that is collected in the Batman by Paul Dini omnibus as well, so there is a lot of double dipping here. So if you don't have that omnibus, I think it's definitely worth it to pick this one up. If you got that Paul Dini omnibus and you really just want to read the Hush storyline, you could probably grab it in a trade or maybe even the Absolute Edition. I don't know that it would be a necessary double dip because those other arcs are really not as good as the main story or the Paul Dini stuff, in my opinion. Let me know what you think about the Hush storyline, the Hush Saga Omnibus, in the comments down below. Thanks for taking the time to watch, and stay minty fresh. Peace.